The first warning came not from advanced military sensors, but from an amateur radio operator in the mountains of Colorado. Jack Winters, a 62-year-old retired communications specialist, had spent decades scanning the skies, a hobby that had become a family tradition, passed down through 3 generations. His weathered hands, scarred from years of wilderness survival and military service, gripped the radio console with an intensity that belied his seemingly mundane surroundings. At 3:47 Greenwich Mean Time, the anomaly appeared. A series of quantum phase distortions rippled through the ionosphere, creating interference patterns that would have gone unnoticed by most monitoring systems. But Jack Winters was not most people. His decades of signals intelligence work during the Cold War had trained him to recognize the subtlest of communications disruptions. The patterns were artificial, too precise to be natural, too complex to be random. "Maya," he muttered into a secure communication device. "You're going to want to see this." 2,000 miles away, Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez was already in motion. Her compact office at the United Nations Sinological Threat Assessment Center was a testament to her career. Walls lined with degrees from Stanford, MIT, and a classified military intelligence program, alongside photographs that told a story of global peacekeeping missions and humanitarian interventions. The encrypted communication from Jack Winters came through her quantum-secured tablet. Maya's eyes narrowed, her mixed heritage, Mexican-Korean-American, reflected in the sharp analytical gaze that had made her a rising star in global defense strategies. She had built her career on anticipating the unexpected, on understanding the complex dance of global conflict and cooperation. Confirm carrier wave analysis. She spoke into her comm, her fingers already dancing across multiple holographic interfaces. Within moments, a team of researchers from 3 continents began corroborating the data. Aboard the Zorn flagship, the Dominion's Talon, Commander Krelax observed Earth with the clinical detachment of a xenobiological researcher studying a particularly unremarkable specimen. His species had conquered civilizations across 17 galactic sectors. Humanity was supposed to be nothing more than another footnote in the Zorn Collective's expansive historical archives. The holographic displays surrounding Krelax's command chair showed multiple layers of intelligence gathered over decades of observation. Humanity appeared to be a species defined by internal conflict, nations constantly at odds, resources unevenly distributed, technological developments sporadic and chaotic. The Zorn had calculated their invasion with mathematical precision, accounting for every variable. Or so they believed. What Krelax's sophisticated analysis failed to capture was the true nature of human adaptability. Each conflict, each technological leap, each global challenge had been a crucible, forging a species with an unprecedented capacity for rapid transformation. In the United Nations War Room, a gathering of global military and scientific leaders was already convening. General Chen from China's defense forces stood alongside General Volkov from Russia's strategic command. Their historical animosity had dissolved in the face of the emerging threat. Screens flickered with incoming data, the first signs of the impending invasion. Maya Rodriguez entered the room, her presence immediate and commanding. She carried with her not just intelligence reports, but a deep understanding of human potential that no alien algorithm could comprehend. "We have approximately 4 hours," she announced, her voice cutting through the growing tension, "before the first wave enters atmospheric entry." The room went silent, not from fear, but from a growing sense of collective purpose. Jack Winters, monitoring from his mountain communication hub, began preparing his own contribution. Decades of signals intelligence had taught him that information was the most potent weapon. He began routing communication channels, creating redundant networks that would be invisible to traditional monitoring systems. Commander Krelax reviewed the final invasion protocols. The Zorn Collective had perfected planetary conquests across multiple star systems. Humanity would be no different. A simple, mathematically precise operation. What he didn't understand was that mathematics could never capture the human spirit. The invasion was about to begin, and nothing in the Zorn Collective's extensive historical records could have prepared them for what was coming. The first Zorn plasma bombardment struck Tokyo at precisely 7:12 local time. Massive energy signatures tore through the city's skyline, vaporizing entire city blocks in milliseconds. From orbit, Commander Krulax watched with clinical detachment, expecting the same rapid capitulation they had witnessed in countless other planetary invasions. What he didn't see was the carefully prepared response already in motion. Deep beneath the Tokyo Metropolitan Government Building, a fail-safe system designed during the height of global terrorism preparedness activated. Developed through decades of international cooperation following multiple global crises, the underground network was a testament to humanity's ability to transform past vulnerabilities into strengths. Dr. Hiroshi Nakamura, the facility's lead coordinator, had spent his entire career preparing for scenarios most considered impossible. His team represented a microcosm of global cooperation. Engineers from India, network specialists from Brazil, communication experts from Nigeria, all working with a precision that defied national boundaries. "Evacuation protocols are online," he announced, his voice calm despite the destruction above. Holographic displays tracked civilian movements with algorithmic efficiency. Underground transit systems, originally designed for earthquake response, now became lifelines. Automated systems guided civilians through a labyrinth of escape routes, while emergency broadcasts provided real-time survival instructions. In the United Nations War Room, Lieutenant Maya Rodriguez coordinated a global response that would have been impossible just a decade earlier. The screens before her displayed a real-time global network. Every military installation, every research center, every critical infrastructure point was now linked in a way no alien intelligence had anticipated. "Shanghai Defense Grid is active," reported General Chen, his fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted communication systems. "Moscow is coordinating air defense with European squadrons." What the Zorn saw as chaos, humans recognized as adaptive strategy. Aboard the Dominion's Talon, Commander Krulax's first intelligence reports began to reveal something unprecedented. Where other conquered civilizations would have shown immediate signs of collapse, humanity was responding with a coordinated resilience that defied all mathematical models. In the mountains of Colorado, Jack Winters worked furiously. His communication hub was no longer just a personal monitoring station, but a critical node in a global information network. Using a combination of obsolete radio technologies and cutting-edge quantum communication protocols, he was creating communication channels the Zorn couldn't predict or interrupt. "They're using our own communication infrastructure against us," muttered Krulax's tactical advisor, a veteran of 17 planetary conquests. The Zorn had always relied on overwhelming technological superiority, but humanity was turning technology into something more. A living, adaptive organism of resistance. In Silicon Valley, technology companies that had once competed now worked in perfect synchronization. Cybersecurity teams from competing corporations shared real-time data, creating a defensive network that spread faster than the Zorn could analyze. Machine learning algorithms developed emergency response protocols in minutes, adapting to each new alien attack vector with terrifying speed. The bombardment of Tokyo was supposed to be a demonstration of overwhelming force. Instead, it became the catalyst that unified a planet. Military bases that had been on opposite sides of global conflicts now shared intelligence with unprecedented openness. The United States military coordinated with Iranian defense forces. Russian Strategic Command worked seamlessly with Japanese self-defense teams. Historical animosities dissolved in the face of a truly global threat. Dr. Elena Novak, a quantum physicist based in Arnon, began analyzing the first captured energy signatures from the Zorn weapons. Within hours, her international team of researchers had begun developing initial counter-technologies. What would have taken months or years in previous global conflicts was now happening in real time. Commander Krulax watched in growing confusion. The invasion protocols that had worked across 17 galactic sectors were failing catastrophically. Humanity wasn't just resisting, They were transforming the very nature of planetary defense. "This is impossible," he muttered, reviewing the incoming tactical data. But impossibility was humanity's most consistent characteristic. As the first wave of invasion concluded, the Zorn had destroyed significant urban infrastructure. But they had fundamentally underestimated something far more important: the human capacity to turn destruction into opportunity, chaos into strategy. The real invasion was just beginning, and humanity was already 3 steps ahead. The small town of Cedar Rapids, Iowa, became the first laboratory of human resistance. When the Zorn ground forces began their systematic occupation, they expected the same submissive response they'd encountered on 100 conquered worlds. Instead, they found a population that had transformed an entire landscape into a living, breathing weapon. Maria Gonzalez, a 43-year-old high school chemistry teacher, stood in the remains of her agricultural science lab. Around her, a network of local farmers, mechanics, and small-town engineers had begun their transformation. Agricultural equipment became mobile weapon platforms. Fertilizer plants turned into improvised munitions factories. Every piece of machinery, every building, every resource became a potential tool of resistance. "We're not just fighting," Maria told a group of local resistance fighters. "We're reimagining what warfare means." The Zorn ground forces moved with the mechanical precision of a species that had perfected planetary invasion. Their biomechanical exoskeletons could withstand conventional weapons. Their energy shields deflected standard military-grade ammunition. They had conquered civilizations that had far more advanced technologies than rural Iowa. They did not understand the human capacity for improvisation. A combine harvester, modified with hydraulic reinforcements and improvised rocket mounts, became a mobile artillery platform. Grain silos transformed into communication relay points. The town's water treatment plant became a sophisticated early warning system, its underground networks providing hidden movement routes. Commander Krellax received the first troubling reports from ground commanders. These weren't organized military responses. These were entire populations turning their entire environment into a weapon system. In the mountains of Afghanistan, former Taliban fighters and international special forces veterans found themselves united in a resistance that defied all traditional military doctrines. A communications specialist from the U.S. Marine Corps worked alongside a local tribal leader, using satellite phones, handheld radios, and centuries-old mountain communication techniques to create an intelligence network the Zorn couldn't penetrate. "Information is our primary weapon," the Marine, Sergeant Jason Reynolds, explained to his Afghan counterpart. "We don't need to win every battle. We just need to make every battle unpredictable." The Zorn had studied human military history. They understood conventional warfare, lines of battle, strategic positions, military hierarchies. What they couldn't comprehend was a resistance that didn't follow any recognizable pattern. In suburban neighborhoods, book clubs became intelligence gathering cells. Knitting circles developed communication codes. School science clubs reverse-engineered captured alien technology. Every demographic, every profession became a potential resistance fighter. Maya Rodriguez coordinated this global guerrilla strategy from a mobile command center. Her background in peacekeeping operations gave her a unique perspective. This wasn't just a military response. It was a total societal adaptation. "We're not defending territory," she told her international team. "We're defending the concept of human autonomy." The Zorn ground commanders began to experience something entirely new: psychological warfare beyond any of their training. Every victory came with an unacceptable cost. Destroying a building meant creating 10 more resistance fighters. Killing a combatant meant radicalizing an entire community. In the Brazilian favelas, former rival gangs united their technical expertise. Motorcycle repair shops became weapon modification centers. Information technology experts created communication networks that could survive total infrastructure destruction. Young programmers developed viruses that could infiltrate alien communication systems. Jack Winters, from his mountain communication hub, became a critical node in this global resistance network. His decades of signals intelligence experience allowed him to create communication channels that were simultaneously low-tech and impossible to predict. Commander Krelak studied the increasing number of failed mission reports. His sophisticated alien algorithms couldn't process what was happening. This wasn't military resistance. This was an entire species turning its entire existence into a weapon of survival. The Zorn had prepared for military resistance. They had not prepared for a species that could transform every limitation into an opportunity. The guerrilla revolution had begun, and humanity was just getting started. The Zorn research vessel, Quantum Dissector, hung in low Earth orbit. Its primary mission to analyze and catalog captured human technological samples. What should have been a routine xenotechnological assessment quickly became something entirely unexpected. Dr. Elena Novak stood in the makeshift research facility beneath CERN, surrounded by the most bizarre collection of equipment ever assembled. Captured Zorn plasma weapons lay dismantled across quantum-stabilized workbenches. Holographic displays flickered with real-time molecular analysis, quantum entanglement scanners, and adaptive material reconstruction algorithms. "We're not just studying their technology," she muttered to her international team. "We're fundamentally rewriting the rules of technological adaptation." The team represented a global technological strike force. Dr. Raj Patel from Mumbai, a quantum computing expert, worked alongside Dr. Aisha Okoy from Lagos, a materials science prodigy. A former Russian cybersecurity specialist collaborated with a Chinese nanotechnology researcher. The Zorn invasion had done what decades of international cooperation could not, created a truly unified global research initiative. Their first breakthrough came within 72 hours of the initial invasion. The Zorn plasma weapon, designed to be the ultimate technological marvel, contained a critical vulnerability. Its quantum stabilization matrix relied on a specific frequency of energy transfer that humans could not only replicate, but fundamentally modify. What the aliens considered an impossible-to-penetrate technological marvel became, in human hands, a platform for radical innovation. Aboard the Dominion's Talon, Commander Krelax received the first impossible reports. Not only were humans studying captured technology, they were improving it. Dr. Novak's team developed a modification to the plasma weapon that the Zorn's most advanced technological models couldn't predict. They didn't just copy the alien technology, they transformed it, adding layers of complexity that defied the Zorn's computational models. In a converted semiconductor factory in Taiwan, a team of engineers transformed captured Zorn communication arrays into a global resistance network. What was designed as a method of alien control became a superhighway of human communication and strategy. "Technology is just another language," explained Wei Chen, the lead engineer, "and we're becoming fluent at an exponential rate." The psychological impact was as significant as the technological breakthrough. Every captured piece of alien technology became a symbol of human potential. Social media exploded with crowdsourced technological analysis. Amateur scientists, professional researchers, and military strategists collaborated in real time, breaking down alien technology with a speed and creativity that completely baffled the Zorn. Jack Winters played a critical role from his mountain communication hub. His decades of signals intelligence experience allowed him to create communication protocols that could piggyback on the alien technological infrastructure. What the Zorn considered a secure communication network became, in human hands, a completely compromised system. Maya Rodriguez coordinated this global technological resistance from her mobile command center. Her background in xenological threat assessment gave her a unique perspective on technological adaptation. "We're not just defending," she told her team. "We're evolving." The most terrifying aspect for the Zorn was the speed of human adaptation. On other conquered worlds, technological assimilation took generations. Humans were doing it in days, sometimes hours. A captured Zorn energy shield became the blueprint for a new generation of defensive technology. Their quantum communication arrays were transformed into a global early warning system. Even their biomechanical exoskeleton designs were reverse-engineered, with human researchers adding layers of biological adaptability that the rigid Zorn technology could never comprehend. In Silicon Valley, technology companies that had once competed now worked with perfect synchronization. Machine learning algorithms developed emergency response protocols in minutes, adapting to each new alien technological challenge with terrifying speed. Commander Krelax watched the incoming technological analysis with growing horror. His species had conquered civilizations across 17 galactic sectors. They had faced technological resistance before, but they had never encountered a species that could turn technological invasion into an opportunity for fundamental reimagination. The Zorn had prepared for military resistance. They had not prepared for a species that could transform every technological limitation into an evolutionary advantage. Technological cannibalization was just the beginning. Humanity was about to show the galaxy what true innovation looked like. In the first weeks of the invasion, humanity discovered its most potent weapon was not technology, but story. Aria Martinez sat in a converted broadcast center in Buenos Aires, her fingers dancing across a quantum-encrypted communication console. At 27, she was the world's first designated global narrative strategist, a role that didn't exist before the Zorn invasion. Behind her, screens displayed a global network of communication channels, social media platforms, and information networks that pulsed with a living, breathing narrative of resistance. Information is our primary weapon, she told her team of writers, artists, psychologists, and communication experts. We're not just fighting a physical war, we're fighting a war of meaning. The Zorn had conquered civilizations across multiple star systems. They understood military strategy, technological superiority, resource extraction. What they could not comprehend was a species that could turn every moment of conflict into a story of hope, resistance, and transformation. Social media became a weapon more devastating than any physical arsenal. Every resistance fighter became a storyteller. Every act of survival was a narrative of defiance. Children live-streamed resistance efforts. Artists created propaganda that burned with an intensity that defied technological calculation. Commander Krelax's tactical analyses began to break down. The communication patterns were nothing like any species they had encountered. Humans weren't just sharing information. They were creating a collective narrative that transformed every defeat into a potential victory. In the mountains of Afghanistan, a young girl's video of her family defending their village against Zorn ground forces went viral. Translated into 147 languages within hours, the video became a global symbol of resistance. The Zorn saw a tactical engagement. The world saw a story of human resilience. Jack Winters played a critical role from his mountain communication hub. His decades of signals intelligence experience allowed him to create communication protocols that were simultaneously low-tech and impossible to predict. He understood something fundamental about human communication. It was never just about the information, but about the connection. Maya Rodriguez coordinated this global psychological strategy from her mobile command center. Her background in peacekeeping operations gave her a unique perspective on the power of narrative. We're rewriting the entire concept of resistance, she told her international team. Our weapon is hope. The most terrifying aspect for the Zorn was the emotional complexity of human communication. On other conquered worlds, populations collapsed under the weight of technological superiority. Humans were turning their very vulnerability into a strength. Artists became as critical to the resistance as military strategists. A graphic novel created in a refugee camp in Syria became a global manual of resistance. Musicians in Lagos developed communication codes through musical compositions. Poets in Mexico City wrote encrypted resistance messages that could pass through Zorn communication filters. Dr. Elena Novak, the quantum physicist who had been crucial in technological adaptation, now worked closely with anthropologists and communication experts. They were developing a comprehensive understanding of how human narrative could be a form of technological resistance. We're not just communicating, she explained to her team. We're creating a living, adaptive communication organism that the Zorn can't predict or control. The global population began to understand something profound. This wasn't just a war of survival. It was a war of meaning. Every story shared was a weapon. Every moment of human connection became a form of resistance. In schools converted to resistance centers, children learned new forms of communication. Encryption became a game. Storytelling became a survival skill. The entire human population was transforming into a networked resistance movement that defied traditional military understanding. Commander Krolax watched the incoming psychological analyses with growing confusion. The communication patterns were nothing like any species they had encountered. Humans weren't following any recognizable pattern of resistance. They were creating something entirely new. Social media platforms became battlegrounds of narrative. A meme could be as powerful as a missile. A personal story could destabilize entire alien strategic models. The Zorn had prepared for military resistance. They had not prepared for a species that could turn every moment of conflict into a globally connected narrative of hope. Psychological warfare had found its ultimate expression, and humanity was just beginning to understand its true potential. The assault on the Zorn primary command ship began with a strategy that would have been considered impossible by any conventional military doctrine. Major Sarah Kwan stood in the modified International Space Station, now transformed into humanity's primary extraterrestrial combat platform. Her team represented a perfect storm of human potential. Former competitors now united by an existential threat. A Russian cosmonaut worked seamlessly with an American space engineer. A Brazilian drone specialist coordinated with a Chinese quantum communications expert. "We're not just attacking," Kwan explained to her multinational team. "We're fundamentally rewriting the rules of space warfare." The plan was audacious beyond comprehension. Captured Zorn technology, rapidly modified by human engineers, would become the primary weapon of infiltration. Dr. Elena Novak's team had spent sleepless weeks transforming alien communication arrays and energy signatures into a Trojan horse of unprecedented complexity. Maya Rodriguez oversaw the operation from her mobile command center, her fingers dancing across quantum-encrypted communication interfaces. Every movement, every strategy was a culmination of humanity's most complex adaptive capabilities. "This isn't just a military operation," she told her team. "This is the moment we show the galaxy who we really are." The first phase of the assault began with what appeared to be a complete communications failure. Zorn defensive systems detected multiple system collapses across their primary command ship, each one perfectly designed to look like a natural technological breakdown. What seemed like vulnerability was actually the most sophisticated infiltration strategy in galactic history. Jack Winters, from his mountain communication hub, had become the ghost in the machine. His decades of signals intelligence experience allowed him to create communication protocols that could penetrate the most advanced alien security systems. What the Zorn considered an impenetrable communication network became, in human hands, a completely compromised system. Commander Krolax received the first warning signals with a growing sense of impossible confusion. These weren't standard military infiltration techniques. This was something entirely new. The Special Forces team that would board the Zorn command ship was unlike any military unit in human history. Former enemies now worked with perfect synchronization. A team of former Taliban fighters worked alongside U.S. Special Forces operators. Iranian cyber specialists collaborated with Israeli tactical experts. Every historical division had been burned away by the crucible of invasion. Their entry point was a vulnerability that the Zorn's most advanced computational models could not predict. A modified communication array, designed to look like a routine maintenance signal, became the perfect infiltration mechanism. What should have been a simple diagnostic transmission became a complete system compromise. Major Kwan led the boarding team, her mixed Korean-American background a perfect metaphor for the global unity of the mission. Her team carried modified Zorn weapons, each one adapted to human tactical thinking. They weren't just using alien technology, they were reimagining it. The infiltration was psychological as much as it was technological. Every movement, every strategy was designed to create maximum cognitive dissonance for the Zorn defenders. They moved with a fluidity that defied standard military training, using a combination of tactics drawn from global martial arts, urban survival techniques, and pure human unpredictability. Dr. Novak's technological modifications allowed the team to move through the ship's systems like digital ghosts. Alien security protocols, designed with mathematical precision, crumbled before the team's adaptive capabilities. They weren't just bypassing systems, they were fundamentally rewriting them. Commander Krulax watched the infiltration in growing horror. His species had conquered civilizations across 17 galactic sectors. They had faced technological resistance before, but they had never encountered a species that could turn an invasion into an opportunity for fundamental reimagination. The Special Forces team reached the primary command center with a precision that defied belief. What should have been an impossible mission became a testament to human potential. "We're not just fighting," Major Kwan transmitted to the Global Resistance Network. "We're evolving." The counteroffensive had begun, and the Zorn were about to learn the true meaning of human adaptation. The first cracks in the Zorn collective appeared not on the battlefield, but in their most sacred computational archives. Deep within the neural networks of the Zorn's primary governance matrix, something unprecedented began to happen. The infiltration led by Major Sarah Kwan had done more than compromise communication systems. It had introduced a fundamental contradiction into the Zorn's collective consciousness. Commander Krulax stood in the central governance chamber of the Dominion's Talon, watching as centuries of collective computational logic began to unravel. The Zorn were not a traditional military hierarchy, but a living, computational organism, a collective consciousness that had conquered civilizations through mathematical precision and absolute unity. Humanity had introduced chaos. Dr. Elena Novak's team had done something truly revolutionary. The technological infiltration wasn't just about accessing systems, it was about introducing complex narrative algorithms that the Zorn's computational model could not process. Each piece of human communication carried multiple layers of meaning, emotional complexity that defied simple computational analysis. On 17 different star systems, Zorn command structures began to experience simultaneous existential breakdown. The infiltration went beyond technology. It was a fundamental attack on the Zorn's philosophical understanding of existence. Humans had introduced something the Zorn had never encountered, a form of intelligence that was simultaneously logical and completely unpredictable. Maya Rodriguez watched from her mobile command center, understanding the deeper implications of what was happening. "We're not just defeating them," she told her team. "We're forcing them to reimagine the entire concept of intelligence." Jack Winters, from his mountain communication hub, had become the unexpected architect of this psychological warfare. His decades of signals intelligence had prepared him for this moment, creating communication networks that were simultaneously simple and impossibly complex. The Zorn's collective consciousness worked through absolute mathematical consensus. Each decision was a perfect computational average, removing all trace of individual variation. Humanity had introduced a virus of individuality that was destroying their entire philosophical framework. On the Zorn colony worlds, something unprecedented began to occur. Individual Zorn began to experience something they had never known: doubt, uncertainty, the possibility of individual interpretation. A Zorn communication specialist on a distant research station looked at the incoming data about the Earth invasion and, for the first time in her species' history, questioned the collective narrative. Another Zorn military strategist began to wonder about the nature of conquest itself. These were not just moments of individual rebellion. They were the first tremors of a total philosophical collapse. Commander Krulax watched in growing horror as the computational models that had guided his species for millennia began to fragment. The human infiltration had done something impossible. It had introduced the concept of individual narrative into a species that had never known individual thought. The psychological breakdown spread with the same speed and complexity that had characterized the human resistance. What the Zorn had considered their greatest strength their collective computational consciousness, became their most critical vulnerability. Aria Martinez, the global narrative strategist, understood the deeper implications. "We're not just fighting a war," she told her team. "We're offering them a different way of understanding existence." On Earth, every human became part of this broader narrative of resistance. School children created art that was simultaneously a form of communication and psychological warfare. Musicians developed compositions that carried encrypted resistance messages. Poets wrote narratives that challenged the very concept of computational logic. The Zorn had prepared for military resistance. They had developed computational models for technological challenge. They had not prepared for a species that could turn existence itself into a form of resistance. Commander Krelax made his final report to the Zorn Collective, a report that would become the first document in their historical archives to contain something impossible: individual interpretation. The collective was breaking, and humanity had introduced a new way of understanding the universe. Resistance was no longer just a strategy. It had become an evolutionary step. The day after the Zorn Collective's collapse was unlike any in human history. Maya Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the newly christened Unity Station, once the International Space Station, now humanity's first true extraterrestrial command center. The Earth below looked different, not broken, but transformed. The scars of invasion were already becoming sites of unprecedented global cooperation. Dr. Elena Novak entered the observation deck, her quantum communication device humming with incoming data from research stations across the solar system. "We're not just recovering," she said, her voice carrying the weight of their collective experience. "We're evolving." The invasion had done what decades of global initiatives could not. National boundaries had become meaningless. The technological and social innovations developed during the resistance were already reshaping human civilization. Schools that had been converted to resistance centers became global learning platforms. Communication networks developed during the war now connected every corner of the planet with unprecedented efficiency. Jack Winters, now officially titled the Global Communication Resilience Coordinator, worked from his mountain hub, which had become a critical node in humanity's new communication infrastructure. The technologies developed to resist the Zorn were now being applied to solve global challenges that had seemed insurmountable before the invasion. Commander Krelax, the first high-ranking Zorn official to seek political asylum, sat in a carefully monitored research facility. His presence was both a diplomatic challenge and an unprecedented opportunity for understanding. The first interviews revealed something remarkable. The Zorn were as transformed by the encounter as humanity. "We never understood individual potential," Krelax told the research team. "Your species doesn't just survive. You transform." Aria Martinez, now leading the global narrative and diplomatic initiative, understood the deeper implications. The story of resistance had become more than a war narrative. It was humanity's new origin myth. Every school, every community was rewriting its understanding of human potential. The technological innovations were staggering. Captured Zorn technology, combined with human creativity, had solved problems that had seemed impossible. Energy production, medical technology, communication systems, everything was being reimagined. In the mountains of Afghanistan, a research center developed from a former resistance hub was now leading global renewable energy initiatives. In the favelas of Brazil, communication technologies developed during the invasion were transforming education and economic opportunities. Silicon Valley had become a global collaborative platform, with researchers from every continent working together. Aria Martinez captured the sentiment in a global broadcast that would become a defining moment of the post-invasion era. "We did not just survive. We did not just resist. We transformed the very concept of what it means to be a civilization." The scientific community was discovering something profound. The resistance had not just been a military victory. It had been an evolutionary leap. Human DNA showed remarkable changes, not mutations, but adaptive capabilities that suggested a fundamental shift in human potential. Dr. Novik's research revealed that the intense period of global cooperation, technological innovation, and psychological adaptation had triggered something unprecedented. The human brain was showing increased neuroplasticity. Communication centers were developing new capabilities. The very concept of human potential was being rewritten. Maya Rodriguez understood this was more than a military victory. It was a reimagining of human existence. The first extraterrestrial diplomatic missions were nothing like anyone had expected. Humanity approached other galactic civilizations not as a conquering force, but as a species of unexpected potential. The story of resistance against the Zorn became a universal language of possibility. Commander Krelax, in his final testimony to the global research team, summarized the Zorn's fatal error. "You were never just defending. You were always evolving." Jack Winters, looking out over the mountain landscape that had been his home and his resistance center, understood the profound truth. This was not an ending. This was a beginning. Humanity had not just survived an invasion. They had transformed the very concept of what it meant to be a spacefaring civilization. The real journey was just beginning.